Good evening, brothers and friends. Since it is the new year, I want to wish everyone a very happy new year. Hopefully it's off to a great start. Thank you for joining us on our first episode of the year. Just to make sure everything is working properly with settings, can everyone hear me okay? Very good, thank you. On behalf of the Rubicon Masonic Society, we are, of course, and always very excited to be with you this evening as we gather together outside of our lodges to learn a little bit more about Freemasonry, how to better utilize the tools of our craft within our everyday lives. This episode, astonishingly to me, marks our 55th episode of Virtual Masonic Education discussion since we began this series in 2020, which is entitled The 21st Century Conversations on Freemasonry. For those of you who are returning visitors to our education, we thank you and appreciate your continued support for Rubicon. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, we welcome you. We hope you enjoy the education and discussion tonight. And finally, anyone watching this video, which is being recorded and will be shared afterward, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel, so that way you never miss a monthly episode of our Masonic education. And if anyone has any interest in joining live, you can attend an RSVP at rubiconmasonicSociety.com/RSVP. As always, I would like to send a very special Happy New Year thank you to our lodge sponsors, Lexington Lodge No. and the Ware Lodge of Research, for your continued support of Rubicon's Masonic education. Would also like to say thank you to all of the members and honorary members of the Rubicon Masonic Society for your continued involvement and support as well. Alongside the executive officers of Rubicon, Worshipful Brother John Bizak, Worshipful Brother Dan Kemble, and Worshipful Brother Alan Martin, my name is Brian Evans, and we will now proceed with the business of the evening. Worshipful Brother Alan Martin, will you please do the honors of delivering the opening devotion?
Absolutely, brothers. Creator and provider of all things, we ask that you bless our assembly this evening as we further explore Freemasonry and strive to build a better version of ourselves. Endue us with your divine wisdom that we may be better enabled to cultivate the great moral virtues laid down on our Masonic trestle board and improve upon everything that is good, amiable, and useful. Amen.
So mote be.
So mote be.
Thank you, brother. Brothers and friends, our virtual Masonic education aims to help us become better men, always devoted to our family, our faith, and our country. May we all come together to learn, to subdue our passions, to discipline our minds, and to improve ourselves through the tools of Freemasonry. Any opinions expressed during this virtual Masonic education will be those of the presenter or the participant. They do not necessarily reflect the views of any lodge or Grand Lodge or the Rubicon Masonic Society. By participating with us, you consent to our guidelines, and our full disclaimer can be found at rubiconmasonicsociety.com/disclaimer. Just a few more pieces of protocol before we dive into the presentation. Brothers and friends, these are not tiled meetings. Masons and non-Masons are welcome to attend and participate. Therefore, please be mindful that anything discussed this evening should be suitable for Masons of all degrees as well as non-Masons. Please have gentlemanly manners at all times. No alcohol, no smoking, no eating, no foul language will be permitted. There will also be no discussion of politics or religion, with a caveat for tonight's presentation at any time. Attendees may be removed if not following protocol. In an effort to best assure that these meetings go as smoothly as possible, here are some recommendations. The recommended attire for each meeting is coat and tie. Please type your name and any appropriate Masonic title under your video to identify yourself to others. If you're not a Mason, please simply type guest after your name. Please enable your video camera so that all attendees can see you. Please reduce background noise. Keep your microphone muted when not speaking. Please turn off all other computer programs to eliminate outside distractions. And finally, please be patient should any technical difficulties occur. Brethren, my name is Brian Evans, and I am grateful and humbled to be the guest presenter for this evening. I am the chairman of the Rubicon Masonic Society. and past master of Lexington Lodge No. 1, 2020 and 2021, member of the William O. Ware Lodge of Research in Kentucky, and member of Alba Lodge No. 222 in Washington, D.C. Hopefully you guys don't mind hearing my voice for the remainder of the evening until we move to discussion, question, and answer. And we will begin with the presentation. Brothers, the topic of this presentation is called Faith and Freemasonry. During this presentation, I will attempt to address many topics and shed light on various questions related to those two words in front of you right now, as I believe the answers to be. Any opinions expressed are, of course, my own. Any information and research found is, of course, my own. And my hope is that at the end of this presentation, if you are someone who is perhaps unsure about the connection between faith and Freemasonry, then I hope that this presentation might provide a little bit more clarity for you as well. I chose this topic for various reasons, and in all jovial respect, I'm wondering why I chose this topic after diving into it, because this is a very difficult topic to put together in a format that does not tread on our Masonic agreements to not discuss politics or religion, because of course faith has a very religious connotation. But faith is very important to me. Freemasonry is very important to me, and I believe that both have and continue to be a very positive impact in my relationship with God, my family, my friends, my business, my acquaintances, my life in general. So I believe that this topic deserves a factual and well-rounded overview and discussion here tonight. So I would ask of you, please, throughout this presentation, I encourage you to prepare questions and prepare any comments perhaps that you have heard throughout this presentation for discussion at the end. There are quite a few slides, but many of the slides will go through relatively quickly. Ultimately, what I think will be best for this presentation topic is after the information is presented with my opinion expressed, that we really open this up to discussion so we can have lively conversation about faith and Freemasonry as you feel is necessary tonight. Some questions perhaps to consider thinking about are, is there a relationship between faith and Freemasonry? If you do feel there is a relationship between faith and Freemasonry, how are those two related? If you feel there is not a relationship between faith and Freemasonry, how are they separate? And can you have one without the other? Or just a few for you to think about. Do have one rule. As I mentioned before, Freemasons don't talk about politics or religion, and today is no different. However, some aspects of religion must be mentioned in order for this presentation to reach, hopefully, some sort of conclusion. But of course, please be mindful and respectful at all times with anything you say on this topic. Although we're going to be talking and thinking in detail about faith, which has a strong tie to one's religious beliefs, I respectfully ask that we not go into any discussions whatsoever about any one specific religion of any kind. There are thousands of religions, faith groups, denominations, sects, etc. around the world, and each one is entitled to their own set of beliefs. And as Freemasons, we all understand, accept, and appreciate that. So opinions will vary. Many will differ greatly as to what is discussed here today, depending on the individual, and that is okay. It is the beauty of faith and Freemasonry to have unique individual opinions and expressions of these beliefs, and we should respect everyone's no matter what they are. This presentation is broken down into two parts. Part one is entitled Context. Context is crucial when trying to research and understand a topic in order to formulate hopefully an accurate conclusion based on the facts. So with context, I will be going over perhaps a lot of boring information to anyone that might be a Freemason, but very relevant information to anyone that might not be a Freemason. We'll be talking about some definitions, some meanings, some biases, some misinterpretations, some trends, some patterns, some timelines, resources, etc. So we will now dive into part one, context. At the end of the day, it's important to know that words matter. And for us to correctly understand each word as best we can if we're going to benefit from this presentation or any presentation for that matter. So I'm going to try to define faith, define religion, define Freemasonry as best as possible for the time that we have here today. And if you have answers to these questions on your own, please don't hesitate to write those down. We will open this up for full discussion comments at the end. So what is faith? Well, I tried to come up with my own version of it, but I thought, why not we just jump right into Google, among many other sources, and show you what the internet reads as far as what is faith. Faith derives from the Latin word fides, F-I-D-E-S, meaning to trust, to confide, to persuade, to have the complete trust or confidence in someone or something, to have a strong belief in God or the doctrines of a religion based on spiritual apprehension rather than proof. So what is religion? Because obviously the two are somewhat related. Religion's etymology comes from the Latin word religio and had a range of meanings, including reverence for the gods, ritual, and conscientiousness. The exact etymology, however, is debated. I went through many encyclopedias, many dictionaries, as well as online resources to try to find accurate definitions of religion and faith. And I will tell you, if you look through any Masonic encyclopedia or dictionary, you will find pages that define what religion is, what faith is, etc. So it is a very difficult question to answer depending on who you ask. Is faith the same as religion? Well, that's another great question, and I believe it depends on who you ask. There are over 10,700 answers to this question on Google. And here's the #1 ranking answer to the question. Faith refers to an individual's personal beliefs and trusts, while religion is a structured system of beliefs, rituals, and practices shared by a group of people. So only you can come up with your answer to this question or any of the questions that we address here this evening. Personally, I believe that the two are not the same. I believe that faith is not the same as religion, but throughout my research, I believe that you can't have faith without religion, and I also believe you can't have religion without faith. So what is Freemasonry? Well, again, according to Google and the Oxford definition and the results that pop up when someone types in this question, Freemasonry is the system and institution of Freemasons. A Freemason is a member of an international order established for mutual help and fellowship, which holds elaborate secret ceremonies. Love how they throw the word secret in there. Here's another answer to a question about what is Freemasonry, and I have quite a few more other answers to this question in the next few slides, so bear with me. According to Britannica, Freemasonry is not a Christian institution, though it has often been mistaken for such. Freemasonry contains many of the elements of a religion. Its teachings enjoy morality, charity, and obedience to the law of the land. Not bad. I think that one's probably a slightly better answer, in my opinion. Well, what is Freemasonry according to Henry Wilson Coyle in his Masonic Encyclopedia? You can see there, the middle graphic there is a whole page dedicated to answering this question of what is of Freemasonry. So I'll go through briefly for those of you who may not be able to read it on the screen. The origin of the name is not positively known. The earliest name for a workman in stone was cementarius. The Latin cementum, meaning rubble or small stones, this appearing as early as 1077 AD. By 1212, though, that name, or the plural, cementary, was still employed. A new term and many others that I will not attempt to pronounce go on to try to explain what a Freemason is. So it's even very difficult for Henry Wilson Coyle to define a Freemason or Freemasonry. What is Freemasonry according to Robert G. Davis? In his book, The Mason's Words, Robert G. Davis has probably one of the best definitions of Freemasonry, in my opinion. He says, Freemasonry is the pursuit of that which is noble in man. It is a quest for intellectual and spiritual knowledge. It is a journey to become aware of and be in tune with the inner nature of one's own being. It offers a prescription in how a man goes about finding self-affirmation and fulfillment. It articulates the nature of truth. It urges us to ask the deepest questions about life, to contemplate what is important, and to strive to learn more than we know and to know more than we think we can. Freemasonry insists that so long as we never cease asking questions, then it will not be possible in a lifetime to fulfill its mission with us. That's pretty beautiful. He does a great job. Excellent book, The Mason's Words. Well, according to citations in another book, which is Joseph Fort Newton's book entitled The Religion of Masonry, there are many descriptions of how other Masons throughout time have defined Freemasonry, and they're all uniquely different, and they're all uniquely the same. So without reading each one, I'll just give you some highlight points. Freemasonry is an ancient male society, moral philosophy. Freemasonry is an art. The activity of closely united men who strive to improve their morals and nobilities. It is science of life in the society, in a society of men. It is a brotherhood of man based on ethics, morals, justice, and faith. It's a friendship, love, integrity, which knows no limit or decay. And probably one of the most common or famous or infamous, however you want to define it, is science. It is a science of morality veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols. So is Freemasonry the same as religion? Well, when you type that into Google, you're going to find 10,400 answers to this question. And here is the top ranking. And it's from Freemason.com, which is the Masonic Grand Lodge of Ohio. It says, is Freemasonry a religion? No, Freemasonry is not a religion or a substitute for religion. However, it is an organization of men who all profess a belief in, I'm assuming it says, a supreme being or God. So if Freemasonry is not a religion, then why is there and has there been so much fuss about Freemasonry from various institutions? The number one source of confusion, in my opinion, is the original Constitution of Freemasons. Freemasonry was organized in 1717, and a book of constitutions was published in 1723. Many of this, like I said at the beginning, you guys already know. The first charge of the Constitution is titled Concerning God and Religion, and likely the primary source for all debates surrounding Freemasonry and religion is because of this charge. And it reads, a Mason is obliged by his tenure to obey the moral law, and if he rightly understands the art, he will never be a stupid atheist nor a irreligious libertine. In ancient times, Masons were charged in every country to be of the religion of that country or nation, whatever it was. Yet 'tis now thought to be more expedient only to oblige them to that religion in which all men agree, leaving their particular opinions to themselves. And that is to be good men and true, men of honor and honesty, by whatever denominations or persuasions they may be distinguished, whereby Masonry becomes the center of union, and that means of conciliating true friendships among persons that must have remained at a perpetual distance. So there are a few words and phrases in there that we're going to dissect. First, what is the moral law? What is Anderson talking about when he says the moral law? And there are many interpretations as to what this actually means. And that's what's beautiful about this presentation, no matter what side of the coin you're on, if you're on a side to begin with, is that we are all allowed to discover and determine our own interpretations of all of this. And that is the beauty of faith. And that is the beauty of Freemasonry. And it is different for different people. Some believe that the moral law he's referring to, or it could be referred to as the Ten Commandments, which is the moral law being the natural law of all mankind. Some believe that it's referring to the Golden Rule, which in Matthew 7:12 states, "In everything do to others as you would have others do to you." And some believe it's as simple as it is stated in the charge as be a good man, be true, be a man of honor, and be a man of honesty, which is basically saying no matter what religion you are a part of, you should do those things at absolute minimum. So what is a stupid atheist? Well, probably a pretty easy question to answer. Stupid is someone that lacks intelligence, and atheist, someone that doesn't believe in God. So a Freemason cannot be a stupid atheist. And they must believe in the moral law. What is an irreligious libertine? An irreligious libertine is a person who is hostile to religious beliefs. They're devoid of any and ignores any moral principles. They have no sense of responsibility, and there are no personal restraints that this person has. For those of you that have seen the painting Keep Within the Compass, where there is the compass of a man in the field, and outside of the compass in all the four corners, there are bad things that are happening to men. Probably one of the most perfect representations of not, or being an irreligious libertine or not being an irreligious libertine. I should have thrown that picture up here, but I didn't. What does it mean when he says that religion in which all men agree? Well, this is the most confusing and difficult to understand part of the charge. But if we take a step back, and if we look at the work from the time in which it was written, the 1700s, during the Age of Enlightenment, the word religion was meant to be non-confrontational. It was meant to be open to all faiths, to encompass the positive moral law, similarities of all religions, in which we all should agree upon, which are true and essential for a good life. So he's not defining religion, he's encompassing religion. Anyone's religion, as long as they can abide by the moral law, not be a stupid atheist or irreligious libertine. Again, these are my interpretations. So let's set the record straight. No, Freemasonry is not a religion, nor a replacement for any religion. Freemasonry is not monotheistic, atheistic, or any other istic. Freemasonry offers no claims to offer salvation of any kind. There is no holy book of Masonry, despite what you hear. There are no dogma or sacraments. We do not do any type of worshiping during meetings. We do not claim to have a God, etc., etc., etc. I'm preaching to the choir, I know. But all the allegations say this. They say well, this is not what they say. According to them being ignorant, judgmental, and uninformed, that's what I say. Freemasonry, they say, it is a religion. It's bad because of secret meetings that they have. They have secret passwords and handshakes. It's bad because they have gruesome penalties. It's bad because they swear oaths. It's bad because it's been condemned by many religious leaders throughout time. It's bad because it's Enlightenment thinking. It's a religion of naturalism. It has satanic intents. It denies Jesus Christ. It's bad because it uses strange symbols and modernist thinking. It's bad because it has religious doctrines. It's bad because it brings men from darkness to light. It's bad because it has its own God, the great architect of the universe. It's bad because it has Masonic prayers. It's bad because the third degree represents resurrection. It's bad because it has sacraments and dogmas. It's bad because Grand Lodges act as magisterial bodies over its members. That's what I say to that. Every single one of those. Absolutely false. 100% false. But that's what we hear. That's what people say. They're allowed to speak their opinion. But honestly, if anyone is serious to learn more about this, here are some excellent books that I highly recommend. because the truth is not hard to find if you want to find the truth. First book is called Is It True What They Say About Freemasonry? By Art DeHoyos and Brent Morris. The next one is The Religion of Masonry by Joseph Fort Newton. The Religion in Which All Men Agree by David Hackett. Now, I know what you're thinking. It says religion in the title of the book. Well, obviously, then Masonry is a religion. Remember what we talked about when we were dissecting the words inside of the charge. But it's up for you to make your own interpretations. To do that, you need to read the book. Workman Unashamed by Christopher Hafner. A Pilgrim's Path by John J. Robinson. If any of you have doubts or concerns or questions or are unsure about this topic regarding faith and Freemasonry, religion and Freemasonry, anything about that line of thinking, these are the books you need to have, you need to read, you need to understand. And there are many, many more, but these are the ones that are great to start with. So a brother of ours, Mark Twain, he said it best. He said, a lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its boots. And that quote is more accurate today with our social media times and the internet than it has ever been before. So this is an uphill battle. Mark Twain knew it from the beginning. If only he could see how right he was now. If you're interested in better understanding the timeline of lies and false indoctrination and the anti-Masonry stories, etc., then this is probably one of the best overviews of how that is explained. So, is it true what they say about Masonry? Chapter 2. Obviously, you should read the whole book, but Chapter 2 goes specifically into a timeline of activities. And I was going to put that here on this presentation, but I don't want to drag this out with too much of me reading slides. All right, so that concludes part 1. So part 2. Now we're going to get into some juicy stuff. Really start to think now. All right, this is where I want you to think and try to come up with answers to your questions or comments. So part 2 is entitled Parallels. As we continue with part 2, I believe that you're going to see that there are many parallels between faith and Freemasonry, no matter how you define either one. So first and foremost, it's interesting. As I was coming up with this, it just kind of fell into place. So faith and Freemasonry equals parallel geometry. So as you probably know, the term parallel is a geometry term where two lines are in parallel with each other. But these two lines, they never intersect and they never conflict with each other, ever. So it's my belief, and in a way to put this in a format that hopefully is as easy to understand as possible, based on my opinions, it is my belief that faith and Freemasonry are best viewed and understood as two parallel lines. Their meaning and purpose are very similar and closely aligned, yet neither one ever crosses over or conflicts with the other. And I'm going to try to explain how and why as we continue. But it's also important to know that any opinions can be parallel on certain aspects and differ on others, depending on who you ask and what you think. So whatever conclusion you are trying to reach, you can probably reach that conclusion with whatever thoughts you want and justifications you want to have. But ultimately, I believe that you will see, if you are honest and open-minded, that there are more similarities, positive similarities, in the two parallels than there are differences. So first, let's talk about the parallel line of faith. Well, as I was trying to come up with different ways to describe what the parallel line of faith was, here is what I came up with. Faith, it starts within your heart. It's believing that no matter how many peaks and valleys that we encounter in life, that we must always keep the faith, have faith, that there is a positive outcome and trust in God. Faith is a feeling that has many stages of advancement. There's discovery, there's knowledge, belief, and truth. So discovery is you're discovering perhaps faith or what faith is or how to believe in faith for the first time. You start learning more about it, trying to better understand faith. Maybe if you're relating it going to church, you start to go to church to learn more about your God. And then you start to become more of a believer, and you have this belief inside, and then from that belief turns into absolute fact and truth. And that's what faith really is about in the end. Faith should regularly be applied through belief in God in order to be more like our Creator here on earth. Faith has a deep sense of spirituality and thought. Faith is closely connected with one's religious beliefs. Well, now let's take a look at the parallel line of Freemasonry. Freemasonry starts within your heart. Freemasonry is understanding that life is a constant journey filled with many peaks and valleys throughout life, and to always put your trust in God and have faith and continue to improve daily. Freemasonry has many stages of learning and tools to aid in the understanding of oneself to be a better person. There's the entered apprentice degree, the fellowcraft degree, the master mason degree. Freemasonry should be regularly applied and further understood to help us improve and get better. Freemasonry has a deep sense of spirituality and thought. Freemasonry has a very close relationship with one's religious beliefs. Very similar. Now, I wrote the definitions and I came up with the answers for each of these, but they're very similar. So come up with your own and decide for yourself. So now let's look at faith and Freemasonry together. And when we look at both of them together, it becomes very apparent to me that both faith and Freemasonry are religious in nature, and they are both an expression of religion, but neither one is a religion. Faith is not a religion. Freemasonry is not a religion. Both faith and Freemasonry are a belief and a hope for the assurances that we don't see. Both faith and Freemasonry involve a constant journey with no destination other than the only destination that matters, which is the destination of heaven. You've probably heard many times brothers say that Freemasonry has no finish line. Well, neither does faith. Both faith and Freemasonry include methods of teaching. They both include methods of learning, understanding, thinking, coming together, and improving ourselves through the tools of faith or the tools of Freemasonry. Both faith and Freemasonry are a reminder on the right way to live life. You see where I'm going with this? Both faith and Freemasonry help our conscious and our subconscious to hopefully make the right decisions and hopefully avoid the wrong decisions. Both faith and Freemasonry require a high moral code of integrity. Both must first be practiced and implemented first in our individual homes and then in our everyday lives. We practice Freemasonry in lodge, hopefully, or at least think about it. We practice faith wherever one practices faith, church, home, group studies, TV. Faith and Freemasonry both are greatly influenced by Christian culture. Now, that's a topic that has a whole deep rabbit hole that you can go into, but it's true. Absolutely true. Christian culture has a tremendous influence on Freemasonry, and Freemasonry has had a tremendous influence on Christian culture. Both faith and Freemasonry are about trying to behave decently without the need for recognition or reward. It's about doing the right thing when no one else is looking. We've all heard brothers say that. Are you a good man? Both accept that we have faults and we're trying to improve upon them. Yeah, that sounds like faith to me. That sounds like Freemasonry to me. We're all sinners, and we're trying to figure out how to not be a sinner. We're trying to figure out how to not do the bad thing and make the right decision. And most importantly, both should bring us closer to God. Faith brings you closer to God. Freemasonry brings us closer to God. I've talked to many Masons who have said that without Freemasonry, they would have not realized the connection that they had actually with their faith. It's another way of understanding. So a few more interesting slides, and then when I'm going to open this up for discussion. So if the ultimate answer when talking about faith and Freemasonry is to bring a person closer to God, if there is an ultimate answer, is it possible that there are more than one way to do this? I believe yes, and my faith tells me this in my heart. And only your faith can tell you that in your heart. If Freemasonry is another way to bring you closer to God and do all the other right things. Which got me to thinking, there must be some other good examples that I could show here to help drive this point home. Are there any other tangible examples to expose the possibility of there being more than one way to do something? Well, here's a few of them. Did you know that there are 293 ways to make change for $1? The goal is to make change for $1. There's 293 ways to do that. Did you know that there are 7 ways for a batter to reach first base in baseball? 7 ways. The goal is to get to first base. There's 7 ways to do that. I keep looking over here because you guys are on my screen over here. Did you know there are 43 quintillion ways to solve a Rubik's Cube? All you got to do is solve the Rubik's Cube and you win. Well, all you got to do is go to heaven or do the right thing. There are over 1 trillion ways to lace a shoe. It's a true fact. A study was done on this like in 2014. There are over 19,000 possible combinations to the game tic-tac-toe. And as I was tying my tie for this presentation, I got to thinking, I wonder how many ways there are to tie a tie. 177,147 different ways to tie the knot that should be K-N-O-T of a necktie. I wonder which way you guys tied your tie today. So, brothers, in conclusion, there are multiple ways for someone to improve their faith, to become a better person, to express their religion and become closer to God. Probably infinite ways. And I firmly believe that Freemasonry is another way to do that. And I believe anyone who's a Freemasonry believes that also. And now I hope you see and squash any doubts that you may have had, because I had them too. So, brothers, that concludes my presentation. And I will now open the floor for discussion. So, Worship Brother Bizak, are you there?
I am here.
All right, good. I feel like I'm just talking to myself the whole time, so I need to have some exchange here. So I want to go to you first. I'd like to get your opinion, and I'm curious to know, when you think of faith and Freemasonry, how you put the two together in your mind, if you are to do so.
Well, I have to agree with many things that you said, and we have someone on tonight who's presented to Rubicon before, Terry Tilton. And I'm very interested to get his take on this as well. But I think historically, if we just simply look at the fact that we placed ourselves at odds with the dominant religious ethos in the early 1700s, and that hasn't stopped. Now, we've claimed that we've been a religion. We've claimed we're just a handmaiden of religion, and we have Masons for the last 3 centuries who said we're not a religion. I think it's, as you said, up to us to decide how this fits into our faith. But if we didn't have this policy of religious tolerance in Masonry, I'm not sure Masonry would have ever gotten off the ground in the 1700s, unless it was grounded in faith. We wouldn't have the organization today, I don't believe. It'd be a completely different organization.
Yeah, good point. Thank you, John. I'm going to click on a couple hand raised here in order to make sure we have enough time for everyone. So basically, you can raise your virtual hand. You can enter your comment in the chat. You're more than welcome to speak up if we have a pause and you're able to do so. So, Brother Victor, you can go first. Go ahead. And you're muted, brother. You are muted, brother. Okay. Once you're able to get unmuted, we can try again. Brother with your hand raised, I don't know your name, but go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I'm Brian Morse. I'm from Nova Scotia, Canada, and this is my first time on this media, and I really appreciate your presentation tonight. It was extremely well done, well thought out, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. And I thank you very much for allowing me to be along.
Thank you very much. Victor, go ahead.
Yes, brother, thank you. And I'm touched by the presentation, the lecture. I'm thinking of spirituality in a type of formula, perhaps not really a formula, but in proportion as a numerator and Freemasonry as a denominator. And there's spirituality multiplied by religion, because we can't discuss it, nor politics in Freemasonry. And then the denominator is Freemasonry multiplied by math. And Freemasonry is not a religion, of course. We've learned that tonight, but an individual religious character can be a Freemason and come across the 3 moral virtues known to be faith, hope, charity. And so in faith, that virtue, that human individual in Freemasonry is upon the first degree. Moreover, the ladder that is composed of many or more stars besides faith. So terminally, the human body, the human being is ingrained in moral teachings or lessons that are in scripture and a foundation of society as well. So it's imperative he have faith. And it also, those stands on either side of the lamp of knowledge as to be a woman. It's illustrated as well, whose name is faith, and there's another woman of 3 whose name is hope, and another whose name is charity. And that's probably perhaps a whole another discussion, but it also immediately alludes to a totally more interesting perspective when we are talking faith and Freemasonry, in contrast to the scriptures referencing faith. And so the beauty in this harmonious balance of the fraternity and what it's become since 1717 really brings a close look at the Philalethe Society story of that shared about members of the fraternity who've for a while known a man who's more than a good fellow. He had a friend who's master of the lodge. He was given a small position. He climbed the ladder till he's in the master's chair as a result, ironically, in my opinion. And after a year, signally, he had failed to put the craft to work and also to instruct them on whereby they might pursue their labors. And looking a little bit aside from him, there are those who he failed to instruct who are great examples of faithful people in Freemasonry, for they're depending on the master of the lodge to instruct them on whereby they might pursue their labors. And so faith gets very deep in Freemasonry. We have more than just scripture to suffice or survive on as Freemasons. In spite of what, of course, I agree with you, what you think is false of what they claim about Freemasonry, that it's satanic, etc. We've much more of ground and foundation to cover on faith as Freemasons. And so when we're talking about faith, without discussing the religion, we might very well be willing to talk about context aside scripture in which we can suffice faith is one of three women, and the other two being hope and charity, because then we can speak for faith and not really about faith. Rather, she in that situation has the individual duty to identify with us, who she is as a being. And the scripture then supports her in a divine way, because in this behavior, she's performing a work. Otherwise, the faith is dead. Scripture tells us, and in a divine way, because of what the definition of faith is. I think it's got a lot to do with faith and what it means in the first degree, which is in the great architect. Yeah. And with that, I yield back. And thank you.
No, I appreciate your comments. Thank you. Thank you very much. Faith, you think it's something that's just easy, or Freemasonry is just something easy, but we realize how difficult it is to actually put it into something that makes sense. And maybe that's kind of what we're trying to do with our lives. Maybe lives should be easy, and we're trying to, maybe we make it harder than we should. We're trying to put our lives in order. Interesting. Brother John Cameron, good to see you. Go ahead.
Here we go. Thank you, Brother Evans. I appreciate it. A noble attempt to put things into perspective, for sure. You began by asking some questions. Now, one of the questions was intriguing to me, and I tried to formulate an answer. And I believe that you can have faith without Freemasonry, but you can't have Freemasonry without faith. So the broader subject, we talked about God. Religion is the third rail in Freemasonry. And to follow up on your last comment, I think we've made it very complicated. I'm perplexed as to why there are many men of good moral character and faith that are refused admission into the fraternity because they don't have a belief in God. Freemasonry doesn't have, and religion doesn't have a monopoly on righteous, upright man and moral character. So I think this is my personal opinion that we are limiting the experience of having these decent men, and I've known a few that aren't eligible, or I've known a few Masons for years. Then suddenly they realize that they no longer have a belief in God, or their belief in God wasn't as strong to begin with. And the question for me that I struggle to answer is why do we insist on a profession, or insist on a belief in a supreme being, a belief in God? I can believe in a great architect. I can believe that the world was created by design, not haphazardly, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a God, in my opinion. But so, Brian, you've caused me to think again, and I've written a paper a couple of years ago on the third rail in Freemasonry, and this subject is a very difficult one, and you did a noble job in trying to put things into perspective in the context you provided. So thank you. I'll probably have difficulty trying to get to sleep now tonight, sorting some of my thoughts out. So well, thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'll try to articulate your question and provide an answer based on my opinion. So basically, you're asking, why can't a man who's an atheist be a Freemason if he's a good man? More or less is what you're asking. I would say, I think I'm welcome for anyone else to give their opinions, but I think without a belief in God, and I'm speaking about life in general, not Freemason, without a belief in God, why are we here? What's our purpose? I think there has to be something. There has to be a higher power. We are not an accident. This is not an accident. I think we have to believe that there is something greater than ourselves. And part of Freemasonry is putting our egos aside and trying to discover the truth and better understand ourselves. Belief in supreme being is, I would say, one of, if not the core landmark of Freemasonry. However you define landmarks. So of course you're entitled to your opinion, but I don't know if I would want a man that doesn't believe in a higher power to be in my fraternity with me. That they have that. Otherwise, I think they're missing out, and I'm not sure. That's a really hard question to answer. I think a man has to believe in God. They can choose how do they want to believe, but they're not an accident. If they believe they're an accident and this is just happenstance, then I don't think Freemasonry is the fraternity for them. Brother
Brian,
Tree, yes.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I'd like to offer a thought specifically on this question, if I may.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I'm to some extent, I agree with the original question. I have many friends who are not religious, do not believe in a higher power, and yet they're good people. I mean, they know not to kill people. They know to look out for their family. They know to when they give their word, they stand by it. They don't feel the need to tie that to any sort of higher being. They just see it as sort of a moral compass within themselves, and I accept that as their way of life. And I don't make a judgment on that matter with them. I suppose it doesn't affect my estimation of them as a person. However, although I have that view, I see that as separate from my view of Freemasonry's requirement of a belief in God. I am a little bothered by the interpretation that without a belief in God, that no man can be held to an oath. I think you can be held to an oath without believing in God. You just have to do it internally rather than basing it on something external. But I believe that all of us as Freemasons, believing in one God, all wise, all powerful, communicating, revealing himself to mankind, all good, left that one out, sorry. It's a commonality. It's something else that draws us together. I mean, that's something we look for in the fraternity, right? Is pulling ourselves together as a group. This is something from the very beginning that we've all agreed on. This is something that has tied us together as a common bond. We can have relationships with people who have other interests, other things, but this is sort of one of our bonds. So as you say, I see it as a central tenet of the fraternity. It's important to the fraternity. It may not be as important in the way I view another person outside the fraternity, but it's important the way I view this organization. So I see it as one of our foundations as an organization. So I'm not just saying we should do it because we've always done it. I'm saying we've always done it because it's one of the things that we agreed upon in the beginning was going to be a common feature, a common trait of our members.
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. If anyone else has comments or offers a different perspective as to why it's not okay to have an atheist be in our fraternity, please go ahead and chime in. Raise your virtual hand. If we have a lot of comments and if your hand is raised a second time, I may not be able to get you, so that way we can get everybody involved. Brother Matthew, go ahead. Good to see you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Actually, hanging out at my lodge tonight. I'm in Richmond 25. So I had some thoughts on what a few of the brothers had said earlier. I wrote some questions. This is first time I've ever jumped in on something like this. I'm a little bit nervous about open speaking, but I did write down some questions to kind of like get some gears turning on the subject, because you're talking about parallel geometry here as well, and things that go together but don't touch. And so these are kind of rhetorical questions, I guess, but I think it's necessary to get to my point. But while you were talking, I was writing down, why is it important to have faith or need it? What happens in life that requires that we have it? And when do we need it? And what causes a lack of faith, and can it be recovered? And as it stands right now, I'm a psychology student. I'm in my last semester of psychology. And something that we talk a lot about in psychology, uh, why it even exists, is there's things called major life events that happen. So we have marriage, we have births, we have deaths, we have illnesses and sicknesses, and divorce, hardships, war, and traumatic experiences. And when we talk about faith and the need for having faith, or the point of faith, is that we kind of, when we get to a point where we can no longer do anything, but just stand there. Christ even said, peace be still, in the midst of a storm. And I think that's why faith is important for this fraternity, or for anyone that wants to be a part of this fraternity, because we have an obligation to help one another in this fraternity, right? And so the brother was talking about charity earlier. Charity is not necessarily just, a monetary value, but it's also like giving someone an ear, an attentive ear at that, right? So these parallels go together, because I in my opinion, like, charity is to be there for someone because someone needs you. In the meantime, if someone's not there, you have to have faith in God, or faith of something, that it's going to be okay. And that was kind of where my mind had went when we were talking about some of this. And a brother had asked earlier, like, why it wasn't okay for an atheist to petition and be accepted. And I think, honestly, because there are just some things in life that you have to believe in something. And like, you just go through life not believing in something, then really, how can you help someone unless you've known something, that you've went through a hardship, or you've went through an experience where you had no choice but to call on something higher than yourself? Does that make sense?
It does. Absolutely. It does. It reminds me, I was talking with someone today. I was really asking a lot of different people, even not Masons, about this particular topic, just to get different perspectives. And this person said to me, they said that, yeah, they recently found out that their mother-in-law or someone decided to become an atheist, and then someone else decided to become an atheist. And one of the reasons why they said they became an atheist was because if there was a God, why do bad things happen? Why doesn't God step in and make things right? Now, obviously, I don't have the answer for this, but it reminded me of a story that I mentioned to this person of there was this guru who was mentoring a student, and a young boy, and they were looking at a caterpillar that made a cocoon on a tree. And he said, I'm going to let you take care of this caterpillar. Now it's going to become a butterfly. And when it becomes a butterfly, I want you to take care of it. And he says, now, but the only thing I want to tell you is that when this cocoon starts to open up, and the butterfly tries to get out and struggles to get out, and he's going to struggle. I want you to promise me, or make sure you don't help the caterpillar or the butterfly break out. That's the only thing I ask. And then once the butterfly comes out, bring him back to me. So a couple of days later, the boy sees that the cocoon is starting to break out. There's a butterfly inside. It's trying really hard to get out for minutes, and then minutes go on to hours, and this butterfly is not coming out. So next thing you know, the boy says, you know what, I'm going to help this. I'm going to help this butterfly break out from his cocoon. And he did. So we helped the butterfly. The butterfly came out, started flapping its wings a little bit, and fell to the ground and died. So he brought the butterfly back to the guru, and the guru said, "Did you help the butterfly get out of its cocoon?" He says, "I did." He said, "You know why I asked you not to do that?" He says, "No, I don't know." So the answer is because the butterfly has to do that. It has to struggle and build up its strength in order to break out of the cocoon. So that way, when he builds up his strengths, he has the ability to fly. So that struggle is what makes him stronger and better. It's a pretty interesting observation to a question about atheism, but I believe there is some truth to that. And every bad thing that, if you look back, probably made you stronger in some way and prepared you somehow for the future. So anyway, that was a random side topic. Brother Mike, go ahead. Brother Mike Mosley, go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Bet.
I have two different topics I'd like to discuss. I want to thank you for your showing us multiple ways to achieve goals, and I wrote myself a note so I can use this in educational sessions in my lodge later. But faith, Freemason, religion, etc., should be viewed as differences in achieving the same or similar goals instead of being right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I'd like to say is I was waiting to come down here to Arizona from Iowa and to pass the time. My wife and I have been watching reruns of Northern Exposure, and the gentleman who plays Chris in the morning had a very interesting quote that he read. Mm-hmm. And it's with regard to why are we here? Strange is our situation here upon earth. Each of us comes for a short visit, not knowing why, yet sometimes seeming to divine a purpose. From the standpoint of daily life, however, there is one thing we do know, that man is here for the sake of other men, above all for those upon whose smile and well-being our own happiness depends, and also for the countless unknown souls with whose fate we are connected by a bond of sympathy. Many times a day, I realize how much my own outer and inner life is built upon the labors of my fellow men, both living and dead, and how earnestly I must exert myself in order to give in return as much as I have received. And that's a quote from Albert Einstein.
Great. Well said. Good
comment. Thank you for the time tonight.
Oh, thank you for sharing. Brother Darren, I'm very curious to hear what you have to say, because I know you very outspoken. You've done your own presentations about this topic. So let me have it. How bad did I mess it up?
Excellent. Yeah, can you hear me? No, I think you did a fantastic job. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, I thought the structure was fantastic. I really liked how you did the second section on the parallels with parallel geometry and the reaching solutions. I thought that was fantastic metaphor there. I wanted to go in and make one quick comment on something from the first section and then a follow-up question if I can. So my first section, when you laid out that section, that reading from the constitutions, Anderson's constitutions, that section has baffled me and intrigued me ever since I became a Freemason for exact reasons that you said. And I think you're right that critics, I focused my presentation on the Catholic Church alone. They're clearly not the only ones out there that criticize us, but they tend to focus on that kind of earlier parts. But the very last line, I think, is incredibly important and shows why we are tolerant of other faiths. Is the line, who would elsewise remain at a perpetual distance. That's the important element of that paragraph, I think. Mm-hmm. Just wanted to share that to you. Then I had a follow-up question around that kind of same discussion on this idea of irreligious libertines. That's one of my favorite quotes. I remember learning the obligation as an EA, and that one cracked me up. I was just like, when can I ever say that in real life? But and I hope that this is going to be this question. This is a question that I have related to that. You mentioned that most worshipful brother Terry Tilton is on with us, and I want to hear his thoughts on this. Based on his presentation that he did last year, I would think that he would describe an irreligious libertine as a deist, as deist being one of these irreligious libertines. At least that was my impression from his discussion, and I would think that's very ironic if that is indeed the case. So I'd like to hear his feedback on that. Because if that's the case, then the Catholic Church is basically yelling at us for no reason. But just back to my original talk. But that's all I had to offer. And thanks for the talk, Brian. It was fantastic.
Thank you, brother. I think anybody that wants to really go down that rabbit hole of the Catholic Church and Freemasonry, you could go down it, and there is information there, and it probably spawns from something that wasn't even related to religion to begin with, financial, and other matters. So it's interesting. I would recommend finding the answers in some of those books. I think you'll enjoy it. Worship Brother Terry Tilton, are you on? Would you like to respond? I don't see him. Darren, is he on still? Well, while we're waiting to see, Brother Victor, go ahead, please.
Thank you, brother. I think just an icebreaker to my comment. If this hypothetical, perhaps, and I hope it's not. So God, for atheists, ideally, this idea, I'm not atheist, and I don't know what that experience is like, but as just a human being in the universe of some creator or supreme being, I understand that the reason to go into, who's born atheist, but to convert, so to speak, to atheism is because there's a belief that God has failed somehow. And then it becomes pretty baffling to me that there's a need to convert to something that says there is no God based on the God who's become the failure. So I find atheism pretty useless, actually, and there's no need to really change into not having a God if your reason to go become an atheist is because God has failed. So you've become a belief in no God based on the God who's become a failure. It doesn't make sense. Either way, that being said, the human must be self-aware at the end of the day of its own centerfold constitution, and beyond the knowledge of others in the higher manners of human form, but related in the language that we use. We've got to find a different layer, each person, where we are connected with others. And because the physical body and the spiritual body, they're to be known through a spiritual knowledge here on earth, among others in the brotherhood, and in needing some epistemological approach to gain the centerfold constitution of the human being. So there's space then for theory of knowledge and an open mind to the world via language, which gives us a perspective for brotherhood and a relationship with others. And that practice induces faith, and there's no way to escape the great architect or supreme being in that manner. So I don't really understand what purpose philosophically atheism is, because it's not going to escape that individual. That psychology is not going to be enough to escape what faith is and as a foundation. You're back.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. You mentioned the great architect of the universe, which just made me think during part of the preparing for this presentation that one of the objections is that, well, Freemasonry has a God. We have our own God called the great architect of the universe. Well, that's not true at all. Because if we had a God, God would have a name, not the. It wouldn't be the something. It would be God, his name. So I think that's just another one of those silly things. The Almighty, So another thing I want to get, and David, I'll get to you in a second. Masonic prayer. Let's talk about Masonic prayer for a second. Well, why is our prayer Masonic? Well, it's Masonic probably because we don't incorporate God. We say the great architect of the universe. We remain non-denominational in our prayers. And that's the extent of our worship. If you want to call it worship, it's not worship, it's just prayer opening and prayer closing. And if you think about it, if that was bad, and if that was considered worship, then the U.S. Congress, every time that they pray before opening session, would be considered worship as well. So we're just having prayer before and after, and maybe Alan, get your thoughts on that too when you have a moment about prayer specifically. But I wanted to throw that side thought in. Brother David, go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts. One of the things I always find interesting when we start talking about faith and religion is, and probably one of the reasons we're encouraged not to speak about it, is that there is this tendency to try to interpret somebody else's beliefs, faith, and so forth. And I kind of see, this isn't a judgment, but I kind of see that when we start discussing why would someone be an atheist. There's no way for us to be in their shoes to know what they're thinking. So, beyond pure speculation, there's no way we could ever know that answer. But that kind of relates to the other comment that I wanted to make, and it goes back to Brother Darren's comment about the irreligious libertines and the stupid atheist. I think the way I always pictured this is how do I want to say this, the completeness of much of the Masonic language to include everything, every possibility. And the way I interpret it was, again, much the way Brother Darren did with a libertine, I think, being a free thinker. And you think about an irreligious libertine as basically someone who has consciously made the decision to disregard the religion. Whereas a stupid atheist, not just the way my interpretation or my definition wasn't just in stupid being something of unintelligence, but kind of going back to almost the Gnostic definitions of stupid being, just a simple ignorance of the higher powers. You've never been exposed to it. You just don't know anything about it. So you have the stupid atheist, who is someone who's never been exposed and therefore basically never had the opportunity to make a decision on it. And then you have the irreligious libertine, who is someone who has been exposed and has made his decision. Again, my interpretation, I don't know if there's any truth or accuracy in that whatsoever, but it's the way I've always thought about it. Thanks.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for your comment. Well said. If you think about it, talking about religion, why do we not talk about religion? The answer is easy, because it's upsetting, and it can make people angry because we disagree. But why? But why does it make us angry? Why do we disagree? Why can't we? Because it challenges one's faith. And each one has their own individual faith. So to say that faith is not a part of Freemasonry makes absolutely no sense. It's absolutely a part of Freemasonry, but we maintain harmony by not going into the details and comparing or describing or pointing fingers at faith or their faith. Brother Allen, Worship Brother Allen, would you mind maybe talking a little bit more about your thoughts on Masonic prayer and anything else that you think might be relevant?
Well, first, I'd like to thank you for your presentation tonight. Difficult topic to present, and we have seen the different individual thoughts on the topic, and that's one of the reasons why we don't discuss it in Lodge, is because of the differences that we may hold. On Masonic prayer, Freemasonry does not pray to a specific God. That's the nature of the utilization of a all-inclusive and universal acceptance by using the grand architect of the universe. It doesn't lend itself to any particular creed, but allows those that do have a belief in that higher power, that creator, that organized and facilitated and made what we are as a constituent of nature, to be able to practice that and apply the principles that are taught within our fraternity to work towards the truth of that nature. So that would be my take on Masonic prayer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, brother. Brother Jerry, good to see you.
Evening, Brother Brian. Great presentation. With regard to men of different faiths in Lodge, there was a quotation that has always struck me. It's by Christopher Hafner. He wrote in Workman on It Shame. If you can indulge me, I'd like to just read it.
Please, yeah.
Okay. He writes, now imagine me standing in Lodge with my head bowed in prayer between Brother Muhammad Bakari and Brother Arjun Milwani. To neither of them is the great architect of the universe perceived as a holy trinity. To Brother Bakari, he has been revealed as Allah. To Brother Milwani, he is probably perceived as Vishnu. Since I believe that there is only one God, I am confronted with three possibilities. They are praying to the devil while I am praying to God. They are praying to nothing, as their gods do not exist, or they are praying to the same God as I, yet their understanding of his nature is partly incomplete, as indeed is my own. And that last bit comes from 1 Corinthians 13:12. And he continues to write, it is without hesitation that I accept the third possibility. And I fully agree with that. And it's always struck me as a very descriptive rounding of how we conduct ourselves in Lodge.
That's fascinating. So what was the actual part of scripture, 1 Corinthians? Where did that start and end? Was that whole?
They are praying to the same God as I, yet their understanding of his nature is partly incomplete, as is indeed my own. And that comes from 1 Corinthians 13:12.
That's great. Beautiful. You know, and I think anyone who is anti-Masonry can easily find scripture that says the opposite. And that's one of the challenging things also about our faiths, whatever religion it is, that our holy book sometimes is confusing as heck. You know, so that's also, I think, why the moral law takes a precedence here in its description, because you know if you're being a good person or not, or trying to be, if you're being honest and truthful and have integrity. Patrick, go ahead.
Good evening, good people. Brother Evans, I really enjoyed your presentation. One thing in particular I wanted to kind of bring up is, let's say, for example, the parallel that you said between faith and religion, right? Mm-hmm. This guy's trying to get up here. Let me just let him join the meeting real quick. Sure. So within faith and religion, so one of the things that I experienced a while back, being a Freemason, one of the things I like to say is Freemasonry is probably the biggest friend to religion. A lot of people don't recognize the idea that it's supposed to sit in the strength of your faith. And of course, there were some moments where I was going through not necessarily a test of faith, but more so a test of my faith in religion, right? The institution, the building and the dogma and so on and so forth, right? And so during that moment, I think for me, Freemasonry was one of the things that kept my faith grounded as I went through those difficult times in situations and whatnot. So that's one comment I wanted to make, but then I have a question. A lot of the times that I hear about the idea that Freemasonry is a religion, it either comes from someone who is not necessarily tied to a particular religion, or if they are tied to a particular religion, in my experience, it's usually been something of the Christian faith, right? Mm-hmm. My question is, do any of the brothers here online, do you have in your lodge, or have you had relationships with brothers of a different faith other than Christianity who have problems with people kind of bringing up the idea that Freemasonry is a religion? A lot of times for me, in my experience that I've seen or heard, it's usually given off by someone from a Christian faith, Baptist, Catholic, so on and so forth or whatnot. But I wonder if we've heard that from someone of a different faith before.
Interesting question. Good question. Personally, I have not. Everything I've heard is from Christian background, pastors and so forth. And there's a lot of it out there, you know, and it's unfortunate that there's so much hate in those presentations and so much division in some of those presentations. It's just wrong. But, you know, people are entitled to their opinions, and we are, of course, entitled to our own. Anyone else have that experience with other religions or faiths other than Christianity, disagreeing with Freemasonry? It's a good question, Patrick. If you come across anything, any information about that, would love to learn more. hear what you discovered. Thank you. Good question. Thank you. Brother Cricker, good to see you.
Hello, Brother Evans, and all my other brothers out there. Thank you for this presentation. So, a few comments. I don't know if there'll be a question. I usually just make comments, but when you in our Kentucky Monitor, so you look in the index, you know, God is referenced 59 times in the index. So I don't know why atheists would really even want to join our fraternity. It seems like you're going to be hearing a lot of things that you don't believe in. So, you know, and there's two, you know, so I just bring that point up, and, you know, and God is referenced quite prominently throughout it, you know. So when you look at our checkered floor in our lodges, you know, in the middle of that lodge is the blazing star, which represents deity, and some symbology about the floor is, you know, the black and white tiles represent prosperity and in life, and times when you experience evil in life or experience bad happenings, but God is in the center, and the deity. What did I write down here? The blazing star is a symbol of divine providence, or the guardianship and care provided by deity. So that's a very prominent symbol in our lodge. And my last comment would be is Freemasonry has provided me tools to make my faith stronger. All the tools and symbols that we have in Freemasonry point you to God. And if you are open enough to recognize that, it'll make you focus more on God. And so I'll end with this quick story. You know, the new year, everybody has New Year's resolutions. And I've had for the majority of my life New Year's resolutions where I'm going to, you know, get healthy, be a better husband, work harder, make more money. I'm doing these things. My New Year's resolution this year was to get up at 4:30 in the morning and spend time with God, and then let him decide what I'm going to do, instead of me trying to be God and try to make things happen in my own time. So there was not a question in there. There's just a comment. But I guess the comment I wanted to make is Freemasonry has provided me tools that make my faith stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother. God's got his hands full with you at 4:30 in the morning, that's for sure.
Yeah, I wake him up and he's like, oh man.
Good deal. So brothers, last call, any final comments or questions of any kind? Anything burning that you just got to get out there? You know, Roger, you're on, and we, in our Master Mason class, we talked about this last Thursday because I needed some help trying to put my thoughts together. So we talked about faith and Freemasonry in our Master Mason Education class. And one of the questions I asked you, I said, is God tolerant of other religions? And you had a good answer. Would you like to answer?
Thank you, Brother Brian. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I think, of course, and apologize, a little sore throat. I think, of course, that being closer to God does make you more tolerant. And this was a excellent presentation tonight. And I had a couple other thoughts within that I think were it kind of got me started in some comments, but you started with all the possibilities out there that you can get closer to God. I don't think there's a better foundation for understanding religion than our three great lights. And I don't think that anybody can really start to comprehend what those can bring you closer to religion unless you have a structured degree program and have the conversations like we were having the other night And, I think you're right too. You said that faith is a personal relationship and not just based on good behavior. Our fraternity's gotten itself in trouble in terms of making itself good men and not focused on men becoming closer in their faith and better men. And truth-based does pull you in that direction. And you also mentioned something with your parallels that started. If you want to become better and closer to your God, true transformation begins with, and that change really begins with the giving or the serving of our hearts. So I think that being tolerant is something that we, as you said, or as Brother Jerry said, I think option 3 sums up, where we are with being tolerant of other religions. Thank you, brother. Great presentation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to piggyback up another thought that we were talking about the other night was we were talking about various books, and you brought up Applied Faith, which is discussed in great detail in the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And that's another thing we have to keep in mind. You can have faith all you want, but are you going through the motions or are you applying it? And there's various ways to think about that. Are you applying it to become better? And so forth. So, there's infinite information out there to put perspective to this based on whoever you are. And I think something else in that book, I believe it was that one or one by Earl Nightingale, John, maybe you remember, where the greatest way to achieve happiness, and basically I'm paraphrasing, the greatest way to achieve happiness is by helping others become happy. It's giving unto others. It's being completely unselfish. And that's when you really, truly experience a level of happiness that's probably rooted in faith that you just can't explain. I can't remember. I think that's in the Essence, John, of Success book.
I think he said your rewards in life are grounded in the service you give to others.
That's right. Man, you are just too good. How you do it. Yeah, that's right. Was that in the Essence of Success, Earl Nightingale?
It was.
Brother Chad, you've raised your hand twice and you've put it down twice. So now I'm going to call on you and pick on you. How are you?
Yeah, brother, I've been biting my lip. Thank you for calling me out. So, brothers, I think that we have all of these tools already at our disposal. So everything that we have that we consider ourselves technologically advanced is just within the last 7 generations. So humanity has existed for millennia in fear and with a lot of questions. And we see weather events and thunder and lightning and floods and things like this. And our earlier ancestors viewed those things as acts of God and perhaps punishments for bad behavior. And as we advance as a species, we understand the reasons for those things, but we also understand the complexity of the universe in which we live. The James Webb Telescope was recently launched and has shown us the unbelievable complexity of where we live. And it has proven that there is a plan to the universe. And humans cannot conceive of a plan without a draftsperson of that plan. And so a creator is not a matter of faith, it's a matter of fact. There is a plan, and there must be a planner. Now, we may not know much about that planner, but we know there is one. And as Brother Brian, you mentioned earlier today that there were thousands of religions practiced. There have also been thousands of languages spoken on our tiny planet, several hundred of which are spoken in America today. And so, of course, there are hundreds of words that describe an apple. And every single one of those words all points to this fruit. And so, of course, something as important and significant as God will have as many hundreds of names. And so when we talk about different religions, we're really talking about different names, of the grand architect. And I think that's what's beautiful about Freemasonry is when we talk about the grand architect, it encompasses all of those other names from all of these other cultures, that we're all talking about the same thing. We're all pointing in the same direction. We're all looking to our creator. And I think that's the beautiful unifying principle of Freemasonry, is that the Mohammedan and the Christian and the Jew can all kneel down together side by side, and we are all praying to God, the creator of our universe, of our existence. And that unifying principle is something that I think other religions struggle with, the dogmatic religions, because they have this concept of our path is the right path and the others are misguided. And I think that's very unfortunate. It's gone throughout thousands of years of our history. It's unfortunate that one of us has to be right in order for everyone else to be wrong. But Freemasons understand that that isn't true. We're all right, and we're all pursuing the same relationship with our creator.
Very well said, brother. See, aren't you glad I called on you?
I'm not sure.
We are. Thank you very much for that input. Brother Cricket, you threw out a word search in the monitor. Well, here's another fun fact for you. In the Bible, if you do a word search for the word religion, it only comes up 6 times. If you do a search for the word faith in the Bible, 458 times. Interesting. Any other final thoughts or comments, brothers, before we proceed to end this excellent evening, I hope? All right. Well, I'll end with one other thought. This is since Brother Jerry, you brought up a Bible verse here. Here's one others I want to share. James chapter 1, verse 26. Those who consider themselves religious and yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongues, they deceive themselves, and the religion is worthless. So, whereas I appreciate your willingness to put up with this difficult presentation tonight. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and we will now proceed with the final slides and closings of the evening. Next meeting will be on Monday, February 26th at 7 p.m. And Worship Brother Bizak, would you mind announcing who our presenter will be?
Yes, Worship Brother David Daughtery, who's on with us tonight, made some comments, will be our speaker next month. David is the current master of the Ware Lodge of Research. David, you want to tell us what your topic is going to be next month?
Excuse me. Thank you very much. The title of the topic that I'm going to plan on giving is There's Plenty of Room at the Bottom. And it's really an analysis of that I've been doing. I'm a chemist by training, and kind of making a relationship to kind of our natural world into Masonry, and some thoughts that I had on the organization of our lodges, and perhaps maybe some lessons that we can take away from nature in order to improve the way that we behave as Masons.
Great. Look forward to it. That sounds very interesting.
Absolutely.
Worship Brother Bizak, while I still have you, would you mind saying a few words about the Philalethes?
Sure. The Philadelphia Society, brothers, was founded in 1928, and today it's an international Masonic research society, and it's the oldest independent Masonic research society in America. It was started to serve the needs of those who were seeking a deeper insight into the history and the rituals and the symbols of Freemasonry, as well as spreading Masonic light. If you want to learn more about the Philalethes, if you aren't familiar with it, you can follow the link that's on that slide, and I'll post that link in the chat room after this announcement. If you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch with me. Thank you.
Thank you, John. For those of you that are podcasters, these presentations have now and will be put on a podcast as well. So if you want to listen to those, you can, or of course you can watch them on our YouTube channel. This will be shared later this week. And we have completed the Rubicon transactions. They've been completed for months now, but if you are just now hearing or discovering them, and if you'd like to purchase a copy of the Rubicon Transactions 2022 Volume 1, you can go to RubiconMasonicSociety.com/transactions. There will be some more information and a link which can take you to the Amazon page, and more information can be provided there, but all proceeds go to support Rubicon. So great information in there. We'll hopefully be coming out with a Transactions 2 at some point, and we will keep you posted when there is more information to share. For those of you that have not seen the Masonic table, of course, we are proud of that, and we encourage you to watch it. If you have not seen it, give us your feedback, leave a good review on Amazon, and hopefully we'll be able to do a little more with that sometime in the future or something different. A few more slides, brothers. Those of you who attended our festive board and conference that followed this past late summer, this video production, it took a little bit too long, but we are complete with the final version. We're making a few little tweaks to it. I think the feedback has been good. We will be sharing that here very soon, so stay tuned. I think you will enjoy that very much. The topics of the presenters were Andrew McBride, Joseph Fort Newton, Dwight L. Smith, Thomas W. Jackson, presented by Andrew Hammer, Dan Kemble, Chris Hodap, and John Bizak. Anyone that wishes to support Rubicon will, of course, accept your money with a smile. So thank you for those who do support Rubicon. We appreciate it. Rubicon is a nonprofit organization. Any other final comments, questions of any kind?
Brother Brian, this is Keith Gunkel, and I just wanted to thank you very much. This is my first Rubicon Zoom meeting. I enjoyed it very much, and the topic was very, very thought of, and I was very insightful by all the brothers, and I do appreciate it.
Thank you, Brother Keith. Where's Brother Alan Martin? Will you deliver us in closing prayer?
Absolutely. Brothers, Grand Architect of the universe, as we prepare to close our meeting this evening, we ask that you bless us with perpetual awareness of the principles inculcated by our craft as we endeavor to fortify our abilities to be just and upright in all of our undertakings. Let us always be aware of the blessings we have received and from where those blessings emanate. Amen.
So motivated.
So motivated.
Brothers, thank you all, and friends, thank you all for joining us. Our next meeting is February 26th, 7 p.m. You can RSVP if you are not already on our list at RubiconMasonicSociety.com/RSVP. Appreciate y'all's time very much. Have a great evening. Stay warm. We'll see you next month.